So anyway,
So that was
Hi there, this is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, the Women's Broadcast TV Network, Worldwide TV Network, iTube 247, and here we are in the studio in Costa Mesa, California. I wanted to come down here. I wanted to talk to local talent on things like here, and I'm glad in the studio I have Mike Kaspar, film critic, does a lot of interviews. He turned me on to this place down here, which is good, with Mike Boyle, which I'm very, very happy about and excited about. Mike, I'm glad you got a chance to come in. We want to talk about movies because I don't get a chance to talk about movies with a lot of people, and you do the same thing. You're always interviewing a lot of film critics, a lot of film directors and producers and stuff like that. Would you say mainly documentaries or film in general?
Well, hi, Brian, first. And yes, it's it's primarily documentary filmmaking.
Yeah.
Yeah, that I focus on. And but I do love a good indie film and foreign films as well. So, but primarily documentary films.
And the important thing about that is I wanted to talk about Pure Water because I love this water, the alkaline water. I gave Mike some when we first met. We met at Netflix for a couple screenings. I wanted to start there because he's seen a lot of movies. I've seen a few movies, but the thing is, we're not seeing the same things,
Right.
and neither is the public, are they?
No, they're not.
Movies are hard to find these days, which is unfortunately. And then, so how do you send them the different movies that are really good? Netflix has got a lot of good movies. Amazon has got some things, and those things, those publicists, Acme PR.
David
Nancy
Magno.
Willen,
Yeah.
Dave Magno. There's a bunch of them out there. So they've all got these things, but we don't always know where they're playing.
Right.
Talk about that. Why is that important?
Well, it is important. First of all, there are a lot of wonderful films out there that were made for no money by a first-time film director who's poured his heart and soul into it, and they just do not. It's the world we live in now. Even though there's all kinds of platforms for getting information out, free media, as we used to use it, which was an interview with a director, and there'd only be maybe 3 or 4 outlets for that. So people were aware of those 3 or 4 outlets. Now there's so many outlets. There's so many platforms for films to be seen on that it's such a blur to most people. Unless you're completely immersed in the world of documentary filmmaking, it's hard to find where those great documentaries are. They may be in a theater for a week and then gone. And
The thing about that is, I think this is one of the best years for documentaries.
Yeah.
We've seen so many good ones. I mean, just Netflix alone. We were talking earlier, and I couldn't wait to start this show because we started talking about movies already. We were talking about the Great Hack.
The Great Hack,
American Factory.
Right.
What's the Obamas helped produce about that, factory, what was it, in Detroit, Michigan? The GM factory that had gone underneath, and then a Chinese company comes in and takes it over. How the Chinese culture comes over. Will they fit with the American culture? Those people who are laid off a year and a half come back in. They're just happy to have those jobs. But what happens? Do they coexist?
Right.
And obviously, you can catch up with them on Netflix, too. Talk about that, because that's where we met. And we just started talking about movies in general.
Right. And you're right about Netflix is a wonderful outlet. They've been producing a lot of their own documentary work there. They have been a great platform for documentary filmmakers. So yes, that is, if you're looking for a place to find documentary films that you would probably be interested in, that's a great place to start. So The Great Hack, we talked about that. There was another one called The Edge of Democracy that came out earlier this year that was a terrific documentary.
What was that one about?
It was basically about a woman who grew up in Brazil, and her family had a history of being part of kind of the ruling class in Brazil. And
I need to see that.
And it basically tracks the rise of what they call populism in Brazil, and in this case translates into their version of Donald Trump.
What's interesting about that is Brazil's culture is changing, so that's a timely film, obviously, too, isn't it?
Right. In lieu of, we're seeing the destruction of the rainforest, we're seeing a lot of indigenous people being chased off their land.
Terrible.
And also being kind of rounded up. There's a lot of political unrest now taking place. And this film, it really captures kind of that zeitgeist of what's happened to Brazil from her early childhood through the time. There was, in fact, a guy who was more of a liberal, open society president, and he was chased out in a ginned up kind of scandal once he was gone. Bonasero is the one who's moved in, and we're seeing the result of that. That's one of the great things about documentary films,
I love
is
documentaries.
because they are in many cases kind of the canary in the coal mine for what's going to happen. And this is a great example of Edge of Democracy. If you have a chance to watch it, you should check it out. So documentary films, in my opinion, are like a 90-minute news immersive news event. You can really, not only do you know what the broad outlines of an issue might be, but you're seeing it, how it impacts people on a personal level. And this resonates with people. I think once you can know about a subject, about an issue, but until you see how it impacts an individual, it often doesn't resonate with people.
Yeah.
It's that personal story that brings it home to people. And for me, documentary films do that better than anything else.
How did you get started?
Well, a long time ago, let's go back to the origin story for Mike. And that would be many years ago, there was an art house theater here in Orange County. It was called the Balboa Cinema.
Still here?
Well, it's physically still here. It's been closed for many years.
That's sad.
Went out of business, and then somebody wanted to come in and buy it, renovate it. Problem is, it was pre-earthquake regulation era building. In order to upgrade it would have been a lot of money. I started out there back before, this goes back to the time of VHS. And VHS hadn't really even kicked in yet. So art houses were flourishing here in Los Angeles and all over the place. And we were showing 5 double bills a week at the Balboa Cinema. And I was a projectionist there.
So
for
Cinema
about
Paradiso.
Yeah, exactly right. So for about a year and a half, 2 years, I got this crash course in cinema. We were showing Fellini, Bergman. We were showing Frank Capra. We were showing Woody Allen. We were showing Zeffirelli. We were showing all these different great films. And for 3 or 4 days a week, I would sit there watching a different double bill every day. It was an amazing experience. So that's how I fell in love with movies. And I have sustained that relationship to movies ever since. And when I got the opportunity to start my own radio show a few years ago, I jumped on it.
Was that hard to start a radio?
Not at all. Well, I happen to come out of a pretty good environment. It's a college radio station, and they allow you a lot of latitude. They allow you to be able to create your own show without any interference.
That's good.
So it's tough to get established, though, as you know, starting out in a new medium and in a new media world.
Yeah.
But once I got a few high-profile filmmakers on the program, I was able to sort of parlay, I call it leveraging those people into greater and greater, elevation, not elevation, what's the word I'm looking for? My profile was raised, and I was able to get...
Enhance it, yes.
Yeah, so over the last few years, it's really gotten to the point where I can't believe that I'm doing the show. I'm having so much fun.
See, I'm proud of you, and I'm happy for you, because the reason for that is I've never been in competition with anybody. I think the more people you have to spread the word, I think it's better. The problem is we have less people to spread the word, and there's not a lot of the icons, because what you do is not too far different from what I'm doing. Like when I go to Tennessee, I'm shooting the shows on brands and stuff like that, but it's called Movie Reviews and More.
Right.
The problem is sometimes you get dropped from a list. Sometimes I'm still going to go pay to see a film in different cities around the country, because I want to see what that audience is like. I still pay to see films. What did I see last year? I was down. I only saw, what was it, 1,112 films last year. That's TV shows and all this stuff. That's my worst year. My best year was 2012 films. That was 3 years ago. That was my best year. And yes, I keep track of all my stuff. I usually have a notebook. I write down how many I see each month. I've been doing it since 1992. Wow. And the reason I did that, because in 1991, I saw a lot of movies, but till this day, I don't know how many I saw. So I started keeping track. I keep track of what I see on home video. Now it's like what I watch on Netflix or Amazon, the links that we get. And then when I go to the theater, what I see in the theater. For me, in the best heyday, if I was seeing 28 movies on a big screen, that's what I should have been seeing. Because, as you know, we got all these different platforms now.
Yeah.
But now I'm lucky to see 11 films on that screen, big screen, because I'm traveling. I'm doing a bunch of things. But what I should be seeing on home video, it should be between 702 to 707 films on home video. What I call links or Netflix, NBC, that stuff like that. Because I've got to keep up with all this stuff. So who's seeing more than me? Nobody.
Nobody.
And guarantee you, because I've been keeping track. I got my notebook since 1992, so no one can deny what I have. And the other thing besides that, we have 3.8 million views and counting. So we're at So actually, it's 3.7 million views and counting. So we went up another 19,000. So in 2 days, actually a day and a half, we'll be at 3.8 officially. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to have you on, because I love what you're doing. It's
Thank
very, very important.
Thank
There's
you.
not enough of you around.
Yeah.
And it's very, very sad. You've got Leonard Maltin, you've got Joe Morgenstein from the Wall Street Journal and people like that, but there's not a lot of us around who are really true film lovers. But what you're doing, I think it's very, very special, and I think it's a great niche to have.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Well, that's an amazing dedication and passion that you have for film.
Well, I've always said I'm a movie whore. And and I've always said that because I love movies. When I'm down or I want to be inspired, I go to the movies. I still will go pay to see the movies even though I have passes. So yes, I know what it's like to go pay and say, "Oh my God, it's $16. Oh my God, do I want to pay $16 to see this movie?" And I'm like, but I still love the movie going experience.
Yeah.
So I can understand what it's like when you go pay for parking. Sometimes I'll park the car and I'll take a subway because I don't want to pay for parking because it adds up. Imagine going as a family member and it's a lot. You drive from Costa Mesa, Orange County area up to Los Angeles and then back.
Yeah.
Talk about that experience.
Well, unfortunately or fortunately, it depends on how you look at it. Orange County is not the hub of the entertainment industry, and Los Angeles is. And for me, who's really still trying to establish himself in the world of...
You're established.
Okay, well, thank you for saying that. But I do like going up there because it is a chance to have a face-to-face meeting with a filmmaker.
Absolutely.
Now, my interviews tend to be by phone into the radio show. So for me, the eye contact, being able to actually sort of get a feel for someone, I truly appreciate doing that. And we're fortunate. I think you and I both share this experience as we talked about earlier. We have this kind of network of people around us, these PR people that we've established these relationships with. And for me, having FaceTime with an Acme, with Nancy and Emily, or with David Magdale or Vince, or some of these other people that we deal with on a regular basis, they get to know me, I get to know them, and they understand what I'm looking for in a filmmaker or in a film. And I think it makes us all better. And we're able to just kind of understand the culture as well. Even though I'm not of that world, I want to be able to understand it in a way that for me, when I'm asking them questions about their world, I think that's an important part of why I go up to LA.
Well, I think it's interesting because you're outside that bubble, but at the same time, you're inside that bubble. So I call it, I'm a part of the madness, but I'm not in the madness, if that makes sense.
Yes. And I'll tell you how that manifests itself. I've been to a few film festivals. I haven't been to that many, but I went to Sundance a couple of years ago. And that's the madness. I had no idea what I was heading into. I got there and I felt like a 4-year-old at Disneyland. I just wanted to throw myself on the floor and start crying because I had no idea what I was supposed to do in Park City. Did
you have all the interviews set up too?
I kind of did. I had my network of people we were just talking about, and they were great. They would set me up. But most of the other time, I was just wandering up and down Main Street. And I'd occasionally see somebody I knew. I saw Robert Redford walk right in front of me on his way into an office, and I'm like, but it's over. You're talking about being inside the bubble and outside the bubble. The film festival is kind of Hollywood on steroids, and so I got all I needed from that world to be in that world for the amount of time I was in that world. But for me to come back here to Orange County and kind of step outside of it, because I think you can truly appreciate art, truly appreciate it that way.
Well, I know what it's like to be and run a film festival, being part of the Hollywood Film Festival at one point, and seeing all those movies. There's a lot of great movies that we talked about. We're going to get into that in a minute. That don't have distribution that I would see on Film Freeway, and then at that point without a box. I mean, imagine this. And I kept a separate list, not in this notebook, but my other notebook, of what I saw just for film festival potential films. And I had gotten to 97, or it was either 97 or 110. That's just on Without a Box from Freeway that no one even knew of. And then we had to rate them. Because here's what this. I never watched this. The rule was you see a film, you give it 10 minutes. No. I always watched the film from beginning to end because I wanted to give that movie justice. You ever watch a film sometimes and the first 10 minutes is slow? Well, Sundance, they were getting about between 16 to 18,000 submissions. You can't
Oh
possibly
my
watch
God.
all that stuff. So no matter what, for Hollywood, we were getting about 1,200 to 1,400. So I didn't watch all of them, but I watched the majority of them. And then we had a team from Beloit, Wisconsin come in. So they knew that since I was in Hollywood, hey, Brian, what do you think of this? And I could watch. So you know how you have your laptop set up?
Right.
I had 3 laptops going. This one was always playing a movie. This one was playing something else. If I thought the movie was good, I stopped it and I save it. Or else I'm playing this one and then I'm working here. So I'm like this. I feel like I'm an octopus doing things. So what the reason why I worked is because there's so many different things going on, and I wanted to watch the whole movie. And then you'd have to rate: how was the sound, how was the acting, what was the DP, cinematography, what was the direction like, and you rate it. And there were some really really good films that just weren't getting noticed.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this is a good gem. How do you get it out there? How do you help that filmmaker? And this is where you come in.
Yeah, exactly right. Yeah, I am willing to take chances on films that, like you said, maybe the first 10 minutes don't look so good, or even I'll look at a trailer and think, well, and I'll tell you, I'm willing to do this. And this is sort of my philosophy about film and filmmaking, and part of how I approach an interview. Anyone who can wrangle together enough people to make a movie, to write a movie, to produce a movie, and then somehow, some way, by the grace of God, get it either in the hands of a distributor or in the hands of a film festival, and maybe even get it in a theatrical release, that in and of itself is an amazing accomplishment. And I think they deserve the respect for just that alone.
Absolutely.
Maybe the film isn't the best film I've ever seen, but
there might be elements of that are actually really good.
And yeah, you want to know one element? This may be kind of off topic a little bit, but one element that you can almost always predict a film in term, it's a good bellwether for a film, is poor lighting.
That's
I don't know what
true.
I don't know what it is in films that aren't good. And I often wonder while I'm watching it if it's just that it's sort of distracting, and therefore I don't get the value of the film as deeply or as the director intended sometimes. But those elements, sound sometimes, but more often than not, I find that lighting, not done well, can really undermine a film. And I know that's a little thing. It's kind of quirky.
No, I don't think so. I think it's true actually too.
Yeah.
Because when I was watching those films, the first thing I'm looking at now, and I didn't do this till about 5 years ago. Okay, how long is the running time? When I see a documentary, and I'm sure you can relate to this now, that says 3 hours, I'm like, 3 hours for a documentary? They included 800 hours of everything into this film? This is where I run the whole movie, and I'm paying attention to it while I'm doing other stuff. I'm going back and forth like this.
Right.
I'm like, okay, and then, all right, we're 60 minutes in. This movie's not any good, but I'm like, okay, maybe I have that hope. Maybe it will get better.
Yeah.
And sometimes it doesn't.
Yeah.
Have you ever had that?
Yes.
With some of those?
Yes.
What's your feelings on that?
No, I agree with you. You have to hang in there. And I have a fairly recent example of this, and I don't know. I hesitate to name names, but I'm going to, because it was a film called Neither Wolf Nor Dog, and
Good title.
that's the name of the title. And it was a story of about Native Americans in, I believe it's South Dakota, and there was a Caucasian, a white guy, who'd written a book about them. And he goes back out to meet with the elder of the tribe, because he's like 99 years old. He's not going to be around very much longer. So he ends up going with him on this journey through the countryside, and where he meets parts of his family and different things. And the first part of the film, it just didn't work. But the last 20 minutes of this movie, and I'll tell you what turned it, was the elder finally gets a chance to tell his story. And so because a lot of the film was about sort of everything else, and then finally near the end of the film, he basically almost turns to the camera and said, "This is what happened to my people." And that last 25 minutes of the film are incredibly powerful. So that's, I think, a great example. And I had this discussion with the filmmaker, and I even said as much to him. And he said, "You know what? I don't even care. And I don't want to put words in his mouth, but I'm not as interested in people watching the whole movie. I definitely wanted them to watch that last part." I mean, I'm paraphrasing, and with all due respect, I don't mean to degrade the film, but
But
this is.
But you mentioned a point.
Yeah.
the last 20
The
minutes.
last 20 minutes.
This is why I always watch a film.
Yeah.
There's only been 3 films that I've never finished. And one was Super Mario Brothers, because and I remember that because I had to run to another screening, and I'm getting up my seat, I'm walking backwards. It's gonna end. It's gonna end. It's gonna end, and it didn't end by the time I got to the door, and I had to leave.
Right.
So I went back to watch it to see the ending, and I didn't miss anything. But that was one, and there's other films. So I'm like, I gotta finish it. But I'm like, okay, when is this gonna end? Because you have hope.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yes, you do.
Now, the reason I do this, and I say this because I'm not a filmmaker, I will never be a filmmaker director as far as I know. I'm not interested in that.
Sure.
I just simply love watching movies.
Yeah.
I go back to that day, and it only started for me in 1987 when I moved to California, because I sold everything. I ended up in Westwood, and they had 16 theaters. Yeah. And I'm like, wow, there's a movie in 16 theaters? This is before I knew anything. I'm like, okay, I went to go see this movie, and then I'm like, oh, how do these people see these movies already? They just came out. I'm thinking, I didn't know that they had advanced screenings. I didn't know anything. So I started keeping track of watching all these movies, because I didn't have a TV. I sold everything when I moved to California from Connecticut. And I started going to the Bruin. I would go to the Village, and I'd go over here, and I'd see this one. I'm like, you got 16 movies playing in 16 different theaters in one location.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is incredible. How does someone keep up? That's how I started getting into keeping up and watching all the movies.
Gotcha.
And then now you got what, 2 theaters in Westwood. You got an iPic right there right there, and then you've got the Bruin or the Village still that holds 2,000. The National is gone. All those great theaters are gone.
Wow.
When Westwood was hopping.
Yeah.
You know, did you grow up in California?
Yeah, I did, and we used to.
So you remember all that stuff?
I used to drive down from the valley and into Westwood on Friday nights, and we
Remember when it was hopping?
pile into a van and drive down there, and yeah, absolutely. Saw The Exorcist at the I think it's what's the first theater you came to when you went into the Village.
Right.
And I'll never forget it, because we were standing in line. It was me and a bunch of buddies from high school standing in line, and they had set up the theater so that they had a fake window on the side of the theater, and the wind was blowing out, so it looked like if you've
That's
seen The
funny.
Exorcist, you know that's sort of a harbinger. And I'm standing in line. We're standing there, and all of a sudden the line parts about 15, 20 feet away from where we were standing, parts, and you see it opens up, and you see walking across the line, Groucho Marx, and is walking.
Really?
Right, he walked right in front of me, and I'm like, oh my God. This is one of my first times I ever went to Westwood.
Wow.
I see Groucho Marx.
Who was he with?
I was just with a younger woman and a little bit of an entourage.
How'd
Just
you know
walking.
it was him?
I know. I love Groucho Marx.
Oh,
I knew
yeah.
it was Groucho Marx for sure. Yeah.
Did anybody else recognize
Oh,
him?
of course. It was.
Oh,
That's
okay.
why the crowd. I mean, it's literally like the Red Sea parting.
That's funny.
Dead Sea. Red Sea. Anyway, a parting, and here. Groucho Marx. So but Westwood was the destination back in the day.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, that's how I kind of started, and then
Yeah.
I ended up at Power 106. You know, so I was in music at that point, but I was working 3 jobs, and I'm like, okay, let me go see a movie, and that's kind of how I got into that. And then remember video stores? Well, that was the hub for video stores cross country,
Yeah.
the busiest place.
Yeah.
So you had Warehouse Video, you had Music Plus. We had Extravaganza Video, all those things like that.
Yeah.
And you know, I thought to be a movie critic, you had to watch everything. That's what I thought.
You sure
That's
took
what I
it
was
to heart.
told, right?
You took it
So
to heart.
I
Yeah.
watched all the classics, all the foreign
Yeah,
films,
yeah.
and I'm like, I got to watch this one. So, Mike, check this out. My weekend,
Yeah.
the most movies I watched on one Saturday was 11 and a half.
Oh my God.
I started at 6 in the morning exactly. I finished at quarter of midnight with only a 10-minute intermission. I was doing exercises. I was doing everything because I would get all these movies because I had to watch stuff. And then I had to learn. I had to order the movies, so I had to know what to order in 3 different stores. They didn't have the same taste. In San Fernando Valley, they love comedy, they love action, and then they like family.
Okay.
And in Westwood, they like foreign films, sci-fi, and they liked exercise tapes. They didn't like comedy. They didn't like family. And then in Brentwood, all not too far from each other, they love foreign sci-fi and they loved adult movies, which was interesting.
Well.
And I'm like, okay, so I had to watch all these things back in the day. And then you get a chance to meet some of these people. And I'm like, hey, you're watching this, you're ordering this. How would you like to meet so-and-so? Well, hell yeah, I would like to meet some of these people. That's kind of how it started
Wow,
at
nice.
that point. Now, we have any video stores around? No.
No.
There's one Blockbuster, and it's in Maine
Yeah.
or Alaska.
Yeah.
No,
so-
it's in Alaska.
Yeah, it's in
There's
Alaska.
one.
That's
That's
right.
it.
That's right.
So you don't have that experience of someone helping you guide. So, and there's a very, very few of us, right? That's why I admire what you're doing,
Thank you.
because at least you're taking those documentaries out there and giving people a voice to where to go see these movies, which
Yeah.
is important.
Yeah. Let me ask you, what kind of films do you, if you were left to your own devices without having to watch anything, what kind of films do you generally gravitate to?
I like well, like I said, I'm a movie whore, so I like to see everything still. I can't see everything now because there's too many outlets out there.
Yeah.
So, and then again, we're stuck watching it on this device
Yeah.
or laptop.
Yeah.
Do I want to watch everything on my laptop? The answer is no.
Yeah.
I still want to go to the movie theaters and I want to watch movies on the big screen still, because I love going in. I love getting my popcorn. I love taking my water and sitting by myself in the corner.
Yeah.
I like to do that. I purposely do that. I walk in, I look to see how many people are in there because I don't want to be bothered. I put my phone down like this and I know it's ringing and people are calling me. I want to be inspired. I want to like it. And this is when I'm paying or whether I have a pass.
Left side or right side of the theater?
Left side. The movies were made from left to right at one point. I don't know if that's still the case now, but that's what it used to be.
Yeah.
And I would sit in the aisle because I could stick my feet out
Near
like this.
near the front or middle?
Yes, it
Middle?
was always between 9 to 15 seats on the left-hand side if you're thinking of the Village.
Yeah.
That's how I learned this.
All right.
Because my old partner, Bill Marco, would say, hey, movies are made from left to right, kid, and then I want to sit here. And the reason I didn't sit in the middle, because everybody always got up in the middle and went to the bathroom.
Okay.
And I didn't want that. And I looked at it this way. Go to the bathroom ahead of time.
Yeah. So you're on the aisle,
Yeah.
right? So
Yeah.
you know what? You sound very much like me. Left side on the aisle.
Mm-hmm.
And I like to be close enough to where I feel like the screen is filling up my sight lines.
Yeah.
Not so close that
Yeah.
it's, overwhelming, but I want to feel like I'm inside that screen when I'm watching it, right?
Yeah, when I go to the Regal Theaters in Vegas, I sit on the right-hand side, which is weird because the entrance is on the right, which is weird. You can't do that. So you have to walk all the way over there, and I
Yeah.
don't want to do that.
Right.
And I'm looking, and I'm like, most of the people are in the middle to the left because they come up and they tend to sit in the middle to the left, which is interesting.
Right.
So when I'm in North Hollywood, NoHo 7, I'll go to the first 6 rows in the front. And I'm like, okay, they're up there. I'm going to sit here because I want to be enthralled by the big screen.
Yeah.
And I like that.
Yeah.
Rarely will I sit in the back unless there's a bunch of talky kids. And then I'll sit away from them because I don't want them talking on the phone or anything like that. I want to enjoy the experience.
Yeah. I hate to say this, but the films that I tend to gravitate to are generally films that don't have theaters full of people in them.
And that's why I say I count when I walk in.
And that's why you and I do what we do. Is I want to see a healthy amount of people in a theater when I walk in.
Absolutely.
It's
I
just
actually count.
Hmm?
I actually count and see how many people are there.
Yeah.
I can't help it. I'm a counter when it comes to
I'm
those
not.
things.
I'm not going to name the film, but I recently, about 2 months ago, I was honored to be asked to moderate a Q&A for a documentary film, and it was in Beverly Hills, and 6 people showed up. It was the first screening.
Now that's sad and that's unfortunate.
No, it's a very good documentary. Again, I'm not going to say the name, but really good
I
documentary.
had a couple other friends say the same thing with some of the films like that, and that's what bothers me. That's why I wanted to do this show like this. That's sad. I mean, these people work on these films for a couple years,
Right.
And that's not what they're expecting.
And yeah,
What do you chalk that up to?
Again, it was, the subject matter wasn't a particularly uplifting topic. I can understand why people would be reticent to go pay $15 to watch a movie that inevitably would not be something that they would leave the theater whistling and snapping their fingers over. But at the same time, to what your point is, was a really good documentary. Some of it has to do with the theaters itself. And I noticed the trend. The Lemley Monica Film Center.
Yep.
They have I think 7 or 8 theaters.
9 now.
9,
They opened 2 more.
and some of them only have 30 seats in them.
Right.
Which is, okay, if that's where we're at in terms of movie going, that's great. I'd rather see 30 people crowded into a small
Absolutely, I
theater
agree.
than to see 6 people in a theater that holds 300.
Yeah.
So I get that. So in that experience is better because you're not walking into a theater and going, oh my God, I'm the only one here.
Yeah.
Hey, a bunch of people want to see this movie that I want to see. So I think some of it is kind of adjusting the size of theaters to a changing demographic and audience.
Yeah.
That will help enhance our viewing experience. Some of these theaters are pretty old. The Laemmle, I love the Laemmles. These people have dedicated their entire lives to that Laemmle family,
Yep.
one of the founding families in Hollywood, done a great job. But the theaters are getting a little long in the tooth. And walking into a lobby, it's obvious. So if you're going to pay $15 and you walk into a lobby and it feels like it's 100 years old, it's a tough thing to get past. So there's that. There's sort of that's kind of the peripheral stuff. But they just don't know about these movies, a lot of them.
Mm-hmm.
It is this blur. It is just a fire hose of films coming out every week, new binge-worthy TV shows. It's tough. But I believe in my heart that it is a matter of getting people used to going to certain sites and certain platforms to find out about these movies. I still think there's an opportunity. If there's an opportunity to bust out an Avengers film that sucks all the air out of a publicity universe, there's still room. There's still, I do believe that there are, and for highlighting these wonderful, smallish films. One of the things that I'm particularly proud of, and this is the thing that probably makes me happier than anything about doing film school radio, is that a lot of the people who are on my show for their first film are now directing tentpole movies.
Mm.
And I don't think it's such a stretch to go to those people. And again, Ava DuVernay's been on the show, Barry Jenkins, Damien Giselle, Duncan Jones, Colin Trevorrow, all these people, Ann Bowden, they've all been on the show. They themselves can be ambassadors for small films. I don't know that it would be asking a lot of them, and maybe they are. Maybe they're doing a lot more than I know of, to kind of make an audience aware, kind of educate an audience to get out and support these first-time filmmakers. I don't know what that form that takes, but it feels like there's some opportunity there.
You know, the interesting thing, you were talking about the Laemmles. I love Bob and Greg Laemmle. That's the reasons why when I'm in California, I always go to the NoHo 7 in North Hollywood, California, because I love it. And I'll tell you why I love it there, because you still get those independent films there. I love the Laemmle brand. They opened up 2 new theaters. One was in Glendale, and the other one was in Newhall. And I remember him, Greg showing me the outline of that, because I've known them since 1994. Mm-hmm. So that's how long I've been going to, like, the Royal. I remember, if you remember Kevin Thomas, used to watch all the B films. It would be Kevin Thomas, myself, and Jerry Gardner, and 1 or 2 other people on a weekday morning at 10 a.m. watching the latest movie there. Kevin Thomas would always fall asleep, and he would always go, "So what happened?" And I'd be telling him, and then he would go back and write what he missed, because I told him. If you can imagine that. And I'm like thinking, huh. And then I go, Kevin, and then I remember when Braveheart came out, and I go, Kevin, what do you think of Braveheart? He goes, oh, I wasn't assigned to see it. I go, what do you mean assigned to see it? You didn't see Braveheart? He goes, no, I wasn't assigned to see it. I'm like, assigned to see it? And that's when I found out that they were only assigned to see certain films. Again, I thought you were supposed to see every film out there. So here I am, the straight black guy. I'm going to every movie that I can get my hands on to see, including stuff on home video that was being released straight to home video. Yeah. And I'm like, oh, so you only have to see, oh, I get it. No, I'll keep doing what I'm doing. Because, again, giving voice to those films that need to be seen out there. And I never forgot that. Yeah. So what came to that thing is, there's a film called Carl Laemmle. Did you see that this year? On the Laemmle, how the Laemmle...
oh, no, I know of it, but no, I didn't see.
Great.
Was it?
And it was an honor. They had it at the Jewish Film Festival. Roz Wolf was the publicist for it. And I remember I saw it the night before I went to Tennessee. So it was in June of this year. And it was basically how Carl Laemmle started Laemmle Theaters and Universal Studios. Right. Which was great. Yeah. And Universal Pictures. So at that point, I could relate to everything that Carl Laemmle did. He hired the most women back in the 30s to direct his films. That family name, they started making all the horror films. he had his nephew. He had come in there and he goes, "What's the sense? What's the next thing that we will see coming up?" And then you see all the Universal horror films. That's how it came up. He thought this would be good, so he took the advice of his nephew, who people didn't respect. But he was that that person to say, "I think people would like to see this." You have them. You had Frankenstein. You have the Mummy. All this stuff. Dracula coming in. That's how that brand started.
Right.
So I love that, and I could relate to that. And again, it didn't go to the No-Host 7. I thought for sure that Carl Lemley would go through their own theater. It didn't go there. I don't know if it went to Second Street or whatever, but it didn't go to there.
Yeah.
And I'm like, I'm still telling people about that film. And then when it came to other things like the sports film Willie, which I saw on the first black hockey player, Willie O'Ree, I didn't know about him. I remember reading about him briefly, but I didn't know about the guy, and the movie was made. And it was really, really good. And this is the synopsis of it. You know, it turns out that Willie played in 1958. He played for the Boston Bruins, but he grew up in Canada. And then he ended up playing hockey. If you can imagine this, he was blind in one eye. He never told anybody about that. He had a puck that went into his eye and did something to his retina, I believe it was. And so he never told anybody. I don't think he told anybody until he was 60 or 70. He's 82, 83 right now. So it was an honor to meet him. So he played 21 years in the NHL. And the great thing is now he's the ambassador for NHL on diversity. So that's why you see more minorities playing hockey.
Right.
So, and that's good. But he also talks about the racism of things that happened then and what they're still experiencing now, which was great, which leads us to Five Russians.
Yes, the Five Russians.
About the Detroit Red Wings having the first Russians coming over to play hockey.
Right. It started out as a kind of a one-off. The Detroit Red Wings, it's hard to imagine now. If you follow hockey, you know they're a pretty dominant team. They have been for years. They're kind of on the downhill a little bit right now, but they were for years considered the gold standard for hockey. But they brought in a Russian, and at first
the story.
Just one, and then he did well. They brought in his sort of best friend from the old Soviet team. They had to really wrangle. It was all Cold War politics. They really had to finagle. They had to sneak him. One of them, I think the second one, they had to basically sneak out of.
And they had a cash flow of money.
they had bags full of money, and it was all international intrigue. And then eventually they got three more from the Russian hockey team, which for people who may not be old enough, but back in the 1970s and 80s, the Russians were the world's best hockey team. The Soviet Army hockey team. And a great story, and told by a man who grew up in Detroit. It was a personal thing. He grew up loving the team. He grew up loving these particular players. Again, one of the great things about documentary films, and it's very rare that you don't see this, that it's a passion project. It's a story that you have to tell, whoever that filmmaker might be. And in the case of the filmmaker for the Russian Five, that's how he was. He absolutely was in love with the team. He got a chance. I think he mentioned in the interview with me, he got to go to a game and he got to meet him. And
see, that's an honor.
Yeah, it stuck with him forever. You know, I mean, it's one of those things.
Now, you saw that movie February, March, right?
Actually, I didn't see it until May.
Okay.
So you saw it earlier than I did.
No, I didn't. I just saw it, not even a month ago. I thought it was a new movie. My friend of mine, Gene Chinaris from Sportomix, turned me onto it because they were in his office. I'll talk about Sportomix in a minute.
Yeah.
But it was one of those things where, hey, Brian, we got this movie. It's just coming out. It's called The Five Russians. And I'm like, really? I want to see it.
Yeah.
And it was really good. I was like, not only is it inspirational, I have my 4 E's. It's engaging, it's exciting, it's entertaining, and it's an emotional film.
Yeah.
It's a really good film.
Yeah.
And I'm like, when's it coming out? Oh, Brian, it came out in February. I'm like, what? Where? I didn't see it. How did I not know about it? And I'm just seeing it now. It goes, yes, now it's on DVD. Right. Okay, so we're promoting it now. So the thing is, this is what we're talking about, these movies.
The director is Jason Riehl, Riehl, in case you want to know. And the website is therussian5.com, so you can find out more about it. And it's a terrific film. I would recommend it. And it's one of those where anybody in the family, I think, even if you're not a sports fan, you'd enjoy it. Because, again, It's this personal connection.
Well, you can be a Boston Bruins fan, which is what I was growing up, because I like Bobby Orr and that.
Yeah.
And again, I was the black guy playing street hockey in Connecticut. Yeah. And I was like, you got to like the Bruins. Okay. So I did. I didn't know Willie O'Ree, played for him, which I'm like, oh, I just happen to be a hockey fan. I mean, whatever. But again, the reason why this is good, Sportamix is good, because Sportamix connects the world of sports. So it's like the LinkedIn and Facebook app for nothing but sports around the world, and it's really huge. So you think of LeBron James, you think of the Williams sisters or Tiger Woods. They were all discovered when they were young.
Right.
So you could be a coach, you can be a friend, you can be an athlete, and you can go on and talk about someone that maybe not being able to be seen in India who's playing cricket.
Right.
And you could talk about it and help promote that person.
So Sportamix is a platform for athletes to be sort of as an opportunity for them to tell their story. Right?
Yeah, this would have been great for the Five Russians at that point,
So this is new? The Sportamix?
Yeah, it's been around for almost a year now.
Okay.
Gene Chinaris is there. Lee Steinberg is the president of that. And we do a lot of the interviews. So Terry Marie and myself, we did the interviews at the NFL for a lot of these athletes like this. So now I'm going to be doing stuff this weekend at the Long Beach Convention Center for the World Championship Jiu-Jitsu.
Oh,
And
nice.
I'll be talking to them, so they're represented to 130 countries, which is good. So that's that.
Well, Lee is a local resident.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
exactly.
he's from right around the corner. In fact, I actually... Well, I say met him. I used to work at a Trader Joe's. He came into my Trader Joe's.
That's funny.
I didn't meet him, but anyway, no, that's great. That is a wonderful platform. And again, athletics brings out the best and the worst in people. I mean, sometimes the hyper-competitiveness of it can be damaging, but it's also stories of perseverance, dedication, and also provides an opportunity to kind of see humanity at its best when it's done the right way. So, that sounds great.
Well, and you turned me on to a movie. What was it? The East LA football team.
Oh, the All-Americans.
The All-Americans,
Yeah.
which I thought was good.
Yeah.
Talk about that.
Yeah, I just interviewed the director today. It's a terrific film. It's basically about these two high schools in East LA who've been rivals now for 70 years. It's Garfield High and Roosevelt High, and it is the story just of. It's not just about, speaking of that, it's not just about the game. It's about the circumstances that a predominantly immigrant community of East LA, where they came from, the living conditions, their stories, the stories of people struggling to make their way in the world, trying to bring their families up. And it's about that, and it's also about sports. It's about...
what was interesting about that? I didn't know anything about that.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, this is a great story.
Yeah.
And that people can relate to. That's what I thought it was, why it was good.
Yeah, it really was. I enjoyed it. And yeah, just what you said. It tells a very particular story. It focuses on maybe 3 or 4 of the athletes, but you get to see what their family circumstances are. And how immigration, lack of status, those kinds of things impact them. A couple of the characters are working, minimum wage jobs, as hard as anyone you could imagine doing, hoping to break into their idea of the American dream. And it's part of the story. And it's called The All-Americans. It comes out this Friday. Any
idea what theaters? It's kind of hard to say. This is the
No,
challenge.
it's all over. It's one of the rare documentaries you'll see. It plays in the City of Commerce, Norwalk, Puente Hills. It's all over Los Angeles area.
And about Orange County?
Not that I could remember anything in Orange County. That's funny you should say that. I don't think it is.
And that's the tricky part,
Yeah.
getting into those theaters. Because again, it's a great story that any high school can relate to.
Right, and there you go.
Everybody has a rival.
And that's another element to our discussion: marketing the film. It's not only you and I, doing our best.
I didn't know about it until you told me about it.
But I'm saying, but it's not playing. I want to make absolutely certain I don't misspeak here. But I don't believe it's playing anywhere besides a few selected theaters and predominantly the L.A. County area.
Right.
I don't.
Right.
I just want to make sure I'm not misspeaking. But it's also that's a decision on the part of the distributor
Yeah.
on where it plays, and that can be a limiting opportunity.
And I think because of those big budget movies, they get pushed out too.
Yeah, what's out right? What's the big movie? I'm trying to think of the
Well,
big.
now the past week was Terminator,
Oh, that's right.
which I liked, which didn't do well.
Oh wow! I saw
I
just a
loved it.
blurb that said it was playing everywhere and that it was doing well. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah, I mean, if you haven't seen Terminator, I mean, I thought it was great. Again, it stars and then my partner Montague Pope LeBeau from the artofmontague.com, he says the reason it didn't do well because it was women leads, Linda Hamilton, and then the Latino lady who stars in it.
Right.
And I thought it was great. But when he says that, I'm like, no, that makes sense. But then again, I went back to, I think it was the problem of marketing. So I go back to Paramount at that point. That's my opinion. That's how I see that.
Yeah, that's interesting because
Now again, I paid to go see this movie. But I enjoyed it.
Well, that's another part of the story, and that is I read it was just a blurb, so I hope I'm correct when I say this, that it in fact did really well worldwide. Like it opened really well around the world. And this is another element in our discussion about films and small films and big films and documentaries and all the rest of it, is we here in the United States have been the dominant market for films for, forever. Now, the Indian market is very strong, and they've had a vital, strong film going audience for a long time. But here in America, that's changed. The demographics, the marketing of these films, China, South America, Asia, they're all become the most, probably in some ways, the more important markets for us. So I'm looking here at where the All-Americans is playing this week. And Covina, Norwalk, Orange. So it is here in Orange County. Puente Hills.
So you can go
Torrance.
see it.
Yeah, just Riverside, San Diego, and then Texas. It's opening next week. So, but I think marketing is an important reason why we don't see a lot of these films generally, the smaller films. But it's an economic decision, isn't it? Right? I mean, they're trying to maximize their opportunities to make money.
Here's another film.
Yeah.
College Behind Bars. This is from PBS. So Lynn Novak directed this. If you know her, she's always been Ken Burns' producer. So this is her first time directing this, and Ken Burns presents. If you know Ken Burns, the history of jazz, the Civil War, the Dust Bowl,
baseball.
Recently, baseball, which was great, and recently he did the history of country music, which was good.
Yeah, Vietnam. He also did the Vietnam documentary.
Oh yes, that too, which is excellent.
Yeah.
So he's one of my favorite filmmakers. So this was good because it talks about being incarcerated. Well, you're behind bars. There's nothing to do unless you want to go and work out or figure out a way to get contraband into the prison. Well, these people end up taking college courses, and then a 2-year course, and then a 4-year course if they're lucky. Not easy to do. So imagine them studying. And then there's a thing that happened a year with 2019, so a year ago. 4 of them beat the Harvard debate school.
Is that right?
In a debate.
Oh, that's fantastic.
If you can imagine that. So this was actually pretty good. So
it's called again, what is it?
College Behind Bars.
College Behind Bars.
And it comes out, it's November 24th?
25th and 26th.
On PBS.
On PBS.
It's very, very good. And it talks to you why it's a good that they get their education, why they're incarcerated.
Right.
That you're not wasting tax monies. Right. And it talks to you have many different women. You have men, you have women. One guy named Sebastian June, he is Joon. I think he's Korean. And it talks about why he's in there and then how he ends up learning English and how he ends up getting his degree. And it was very, very interesting. I watched the whole thing yesterday. It's 2 parts, but it was good.
125 years ago, the United States was the envy of the world when it came to jails and incarceration. We were the leaders in terms of a forward-thinking, progressive attitude towards incarceration. And over the course of the last 50 or 60 years, we have become regressive. It's punishment over rehabilitation. But the last maybe decade or so, we seem to have turned the corner, and this film, College Behind Bars, may be kind of an one path that a lot of incarceration systems are taking into account now. We need to clean up our justice system and also our incarceration system. It's backwards, regressive, and it punishes people far beyond whatever they may have done as on the outside.
What are you seeing coming up? Anything that you're getting, maybe documentary-wise on Apple or Amazon or anything like that yet?
Woo. Well, this week I've got Lauren Greenfield's The Kingmaker, the story of Imelda Marcos and her reemergence in the Philippines. What a great
I wanna see
documentary
that.
that is. Oh my God. I had no idea that Marcos family was back in power. And they're
Oh,
essentially.
I didn't know that.
Well, yes, I didn't know this, but Imelda was allowed to go back to the Philippines. She's been there for over 20 years. She was actually elected to Congress.
I remember that part.
Oh, I didn't know that until I saw the film. And she's been trying to get her son Bong Bong, who
Of
ran for
course.
he ran for vice president, and in the same race that Rodriguez Duterte won the election,
Yeah.
and Duterte said in a speech that he would be willing to give up the presidency to Bong Bong because that was the plan. We didn't say this part. That was the plan all along. Imelda's been pulling the strings in the Philippines now for the last 10, 15 years. 10 years.
Interesting.
Yeah. It's a really, and Lauren Greenfield is a fantastic documentary filmmaker.
Absolutely.
Queen of Versailles.
Oh, I love that
Thin, Generation Wealth.
I met them from the Queen of Versailles.
Oh, did you
She
really?
became a friend. I think her name was Jackie.
Yeah, that sounds right.
And then I had her number. She never picked up or anything. But that was an interesting story. And then I ended up interviewing them for NBC because they aired it on, not Bravo, but something like that, one of the NBC things. And I have a picture of us, and we became friends. I gave her a bottle of champagne that she liked, believe it or not. She was very interesting.
Yeah.
And then they had, because this is like what happened after the story. They ended up, you saw the movie, right?
Yeah.
They ended up getting some of their money back.
Did they really?
Yeah.
Well, that's how rich people.
Exactly.
They do end up getting their money. To look at the economic collapse in 2008, they got their money back. So
Important films. A couple films that I liked.
Okay.
On Netflix, I saw The Black Godfather. Did you see that?
No.
It's I think his name is Charles Arnett. So he was attached to everything. He started in the music industry, and I can relate to him. I think I'm kind of like him. He's one of the things where a mobster took him underneath the wings and said, you need to be doing this on the music industry. So everybody in the music world knew who he was. Do you know what's interesting? When he moved to California from New York, he didn't want to go. He goes, no, you need to go out there. I think he was promoting Frank Sinatra and a couple other people. Everybody at the studio knew who he was. So one of his best friends was Lou Washman.
Oh, okay.
So imagine this. He was the only black guy who represented all the studio heads there. There's photos of him in all the studios, and people will say, well, who is he? Well, he represents all of us.
Wow.
Nobody knew this. It's called The Black Godfather. It's on Netflix.
Okay, I'll check it
It's
out.
really interesting. So he was connected to everybody, including Barack Obama. So he put his finger on everybody, whether it's Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, all of those people, including Ted Sardos from Netflix. His daughter is married to him. His son works at Netflix. So imagine what kind of power he had.
Oh God, yeah.
I
that
gotta meet this guy
That
still.
sounds great.
Yeah. So I saw the Clive Davis documentary on Netflix. But one of my favorite films of all time was It's a Mad, 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 Mad World.
Okay.
And I love 12 Angry Men. And then after that, it comes, Enter the Dragon, Bruce Lee, which got me into martial arts.
And you are still an adherent to martial arts? You still...
I'm coming back into it. It's interesting. I didn't know.
Okay.
It's interesting. So, being there with the Gracies, jiu-jitsus who started MMA, Ultimate Fighting Championship back in the 90s.
Right.
When we were ordering the tapes, now it's MMA and Dana White owns it. Now I'm not interested in UFC so much, but I'm going to be brought back in because of Sportomix. I have to interview all the people.
Yeah, wow.
Favorite movies that you had?
Well, were you talking all time or this year? Well,
anything.
All time. It's funny, when I went to work as a projectionist at the Balboa Cinema, they didn't even care if the questionnaire for getting the job was, what are your 5 favorite movies? Now, this is a long time ago, so this is going to sound dated, but they're still on my list. Okay, I can name them still. Citizen Kane, which is kind of a no-brainer.
Film.
A Bergman film called Persona.
Uh-huh.
For some reason, I loved A Woman in Love. That was a Women in Love, pardon me, a film it was a Ken Russell film.
Yep.
Duck Soup.
Marx Brothers, yep.
And Dr. Strangelove.
Interesting.
So those
I never went for that movie. Interesting.
You didn't care for Dr. Strange?
Nah, How to Build a Bomb or whatever it was.
How I stopped learning to. Oh my God! Now,
But it's a classic. It's a classic.
Yeah, yes.
At that point, I would put Paths to Glory in there, and
Do you like that? Okay.
I like Paths to Glory.
One of my dad's
All
favorite.
Quiet
movies.
on the Western Front.
Yeah,
I love that music score.
Okay, Lou Ayres.
All of that.
Okay.
It's just interesting. And believe it or not, I love seeing on the big screen Lawrence of Arabia.
Oh yeah.
And what was the Civil War movie that they made in Georgia?
Not generals and
no. 1939.
1930.
Vivian Lee's
Oh,
in
we're
it.
talking Gone with the Wind?
Yes.
Okay.
I watched it 3 times on the big screen, intermission and everything.
Yes.
It's a great film.
Yeah.
The cinematography in that long shot of everybody and all those real people, not CGI'd, was really, really good.
We screened that at the Balboa on a 16 millimeter projector because we could get the entire film just as you described.
Cool.
We had the intermission, the whole thing with the camera,
with the music,
the music, everything. It was like 3 hours.
3 hours and 15 minutes.
There you go. Okay, there you go.
I know the exact time.
I remember doing that. I remember being the projectionist. Well, I was an assistant projectionist for that one because I wasn't that familiar with the 16 millimeter projector at that time.
That's interesting, though.
So I had and this is again part of the education that I've experienced. I was so lucky to be in a theater to see these movies, these great movies over the years. And I'm a big believer that cinema continues to surprise and impress. And I still think some of the greatest movies ever made are being made still. I'm not one of these people that thinks that you have to watch Turner, movie classics
movies,
to see all the great movies. I think there's some incredible films. This year, a couple that stand out for me. Monos. I don't know if you saw Monos.
No,
it's
not yet.
Alejandro Landis' film.
I like him.
And it's a wonderful film. It's one of those. It's a filmmaker's film, right? A lot of cinematic elements in it. Kind of a sound design that just tears your hair off. And then you're not sure what you're watching for about the first 10 or 15 minutes. It tells a story of a group of about 8 kids, and I'll say they're in their late 20s, early 20s. Late teens, early 20s, and they're guarding an American prisoner in a South American country up in looks like the Andes, pardon me. It looks like it's up in the Andes. And you don't know why they're doing it or who they're working for, and people drop in occasionally to give them orders.
That's interesting.
And you're completely disconnected from reality, and you're watching this thing, and just an amazing cinematography in the film. I strongly, if you haven't seen it, for people listening, check out Monos, Monos, Alejandro.
And I know of that too.
Yeah, it's one of those. It's a powerful film. So also another one I liked a lot, total off the books here in terms of a small little indie called Give Me Liberty. Really fun little movie about it's almost a Russian cast, basically. It's American made, takes place in a part of Milwaukee. This guy is a medical transport driver, and it's the worst day of his life, basically.
That sounds interesting.
It's a group. He ends up driving a bunch of his relatives to a gravesite because somebody in their immediate community has died. But it's like almost like a Marx Brothers movie in the sense that everything. No, that's not even a good way to put it. It's like it's not slapstick at all, and that was a bad reference. But everything that can go wrong does go wrong.
Yeah.
But in the meantime, this guy manages to maintain his humanity while all around him is just on fire. Basically,
That sounds interesting.
It's a really good little movie. It's called Give Me Liberty.
You know the publicist from the.
The publicist was oof. Yes, it was yes, I do. It's Berman. I'm just blanking out on her first name. Sasha Berman. Sasha Berman. It was her film.
Okay.
Yeah, really wonderful film. I strongly recommend. Again, lower your expectations in terms of production value. It was shot basically for no money. By a
good movie is a good movie.
Yes, and it's got a lot of energy. So these are, I'm just sort of randomly pulling out some films that I really enjoyed this year, but some great documentaries out there this year as well.
We got 3 minutes left. 5 movies that you would watch of all time, you would watch over and over again. What would they be?
Oh well, I'm gonna pull out the guy card for this. Okay, I'm pulling out like The Hunt for Red October.
Okay.
All right.
See, for me on that one, I was going not Downfall would be one, but also
Oh
there's the
yeah.
other
Oh my.
submarine film that I love. I can't remember
Crimson
the name.
Tide.
No, that was good. That's Denzel. No, it was a German.
Oh, the yes. I
What
can.
was the name of it? It's a series now on Hulu.
Always.
I can't remember the name of it.
I
Um,
I know
but
that.
it's a true story. I liked it.
Yes.
Continue.
Well, I mean, again, it depends on the mood I'm in terms of musicals. One of my all-time favorite musicals is Moulin Rouge.
Mine is Singing in the Rain.
Well, that's a classic. Yes, of course, it's hard to argue. But films that I'll watch because I find Moulin Rouge, production-wise, a pretty amazing film.
yeah,
I
it
like
was.
that about it. Gosh, what sports movie? Do you have a favorite sports movie of all time?
I like Any Given Sunday, which I thought was good. And there's. This is not necessarily a sports movie, but it is about chess. Finding Forrester.
Oh yeah,
With,
good film.
With
Forrest Whitaker, was it? No,
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery, and that's right. I'm
and
sorry.
it was an honor to interview him. And that was the last time anybody interviewed him. I wasn't even supposed to be there. I was supposed to get up and leave. So this is a radio roundtable, and I'm sitting there. Sean is coming here, and I'm kind of hiding my face because I don't want to get up. I'm like, this is Sean Connery. I may not get the other opportunity. And it was his third to the last film. He didn't do any of the press for anything else after that.
Wow.
And then he did that comic book film through Fox that didn't do anything.
Right. It was
and then
kind of,
he
yes.
did one other thing.
A
And that was
League
it.
of Gentlemen or
Yes,
something.
that's what it was.
Yeah.
No press for it.
Right.
Did it overseas, and then that was it.
Yeah.
He retired, and then never said he retired, but he retired.
He retired.
So I was like an honor to do that film. And The Blind Spot.
Oh, Blind Spot's good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. For a sports movie, and it's barely a sports movie, even though it's about a sport, and that is The Natural. To me,
Yes.
that's a mythological tale. It's not. It's a sports
Still
movie.
good.
It's a mythology about a person who would have been the greatest baseball player of all time. It's all. I just love the idea of it, and I thought that.
But I go to Field of Dreams at that point.
Yeah. Well, if we're talking guy films, Bull Durham's hard to beat for me.
Mm-hmm.
In terms of if you love sports and somebody who played baseball and appreciates the kind of all the baseball kind of jargon and all the rest of it, I love Bull Durham.
Give you a website.
The show is called Film School Radio, and it's simple enough, filmschoolradio.com, filmschoolradio.com.
When can I hear?
It's on Friday mornings from 9 to 10 on KUCI, which is kuci.org. It's out of the University of California, Irvine. But I recommend you go to filmschoolradio.com. You can find out. We've been doing it about 12 years. I had a co-host for about 5 years. We did about 250 co-hosting films. Since then, I've done about 1,100, 1,200 interviews. Recorded interviews you can watch archived. All of them are archived on the filmschoolradio.com. 12, right. I'm up around 1,400 total
I
filmmakers.
suggest you check them out at that. But that's a lot of interviews.
Yeah, and again, Ava DuVernay, Barry Jenkins, Damien Giselle, honestly, people who are now considered established filmmakers, thank God. And talk about documentary filmmakers, Albert Maysles, Barbara Koppel, Frederick Weissman, Alex Gibney,
I like him too.
Errol Morris. He's been on 3 times.
Good.
I mean, things like that. In the world of documentary films, I'm so proud to have been able to establish the show for that.
And with that, this is Brian Sebastian. I got to thank Mike for coming. So honored. I love doing this. We got to have, he's going to come back. I'm going to have him come back December 3rd or Tuesday. And we're going to do this again because we're in reward season.
Yes.
So this is it. This is Brian Sebastian, Movie Reviews and More, Worldwide TV Network, iTube 247. We will see you soon.
Wow, that was